What's the deal with Cell Max's stupid shoes? A while ago, Trev, who's an amazing artist by the way and has previously worked with us on a lot of great artwork and designs for this channel, posted this fan art of perfect Cell Max fighting against Gohan Beast. And aside from the usual high quality of his work, what caught Hav's attention in particular and brought it to my attention was the fact that he decided to keep the characteristics of the weird little shoes that he's wearing in the original design of Perfect Cell, a decision he attributed to anime AJ's suggestion. At the time, it was just a cute quirk, a nice consistency, continuity. But after some thinking, it made us realize one thing. Why do Cell Max's weird shoes matter? And why do they make this big guy even more akin to a Toriyama style? Like he had something to do with it. Even though we don't really know if it was Akira Toriyama that designed him. But now, I know why some of you will say that Cell Max was a waste of an opportunity. That not retaining any of the original Cell's bombastic personality is a detriment to the character. And that superhero might have been overly reliant on the nostalgia factor to try and sell tickets. And these are perfectly fair and valid points. Some of them relate to personal likings or preferences, but honestly, for what this movie is, he is a perfect set piece for the final artwork. I do avoid using the word character because Cell Max here, he's not really a character. He's more like a natural disaster on legs rather than a person that our heroes need to fight against and can duel off of. And in my opinion, he does work for this movie. And funnily enough, those silly boots might be one of the big reasons why. Now, stay with us for a moment. You know, a few weeks ago, we did a little analysis of all of those Toyotaro and Victory Uchida interviews that were kind of overlooked by the overall fandom. Well, we managed to get glimpses as to how does the Toriyama-Toyotaro relationship work, what he is expected to do, which designs were the most challenging, and demanded a lot of attention from his mentor to bring back to it being right and ready for production. Now, one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to us were the suits of Goten and Trunks as Saiyamen X1 and X2, as well as the zombie androids of Dr. Hedo. In regards to the suits, the older of the authors didn't want his people to overdo the cool factor, and decided to make them a bit more old-fashioned and in keeping with 80s and 90s aesthetics. The same went for Hedo's minions. They were supposed to be more Halloween-y, which was kind of silly, very much like the original Dragon Ball. Now, when you come back to the first series, not the prequel, not a side story, this is undoubtedly the beginning of the story. Even if the West got it later, this is where it all started. This aesthetic is more ingrained and natural, but every single villain has a silly characteristic. Pilaf's gang? Not entirely serious. Red Ribbon Army? They're ultimately just a bunch of goofs. Evil and capable of terrifying things, but still goofs. The Piccolos? Ooh, well, we love Big Green, and are so used to the Namekians that we don't really think about how silly their antenna must have been when you first clapped eyes on them. But that didn't stop Toriyama from giving us a lot of serious stuff back in the day as well, or some genuine stakes. There was some really tense moments once Dragon Ball got going, like Goku's first transformation into an Ozaru, the ending of Muscle Tower, and of course Krillin's death, to name a few. And don't forget, Mercenary Tower vs. Goku, the first time that the main character really could have died. That was a really serious fight. The thing is a lot of Toriyama's characters have this perfect balance of being complete and utter goofballs in one scene before becoming fully serious in the next scene. And all of that despite their over-the-top designs. Like, say in Armor. That was pretty striking when it first appeared, and it contained a lot of elements that you would find in B-movie science action flicks, which Toriyama is known to have loved, by the way, probably sought a lot of inspiration from those, but for the most part, Raditz, Vegeta and Nappa, they were serious at the time of their appearance, despite their B-movie inspiration wardrobe. Still, the author had some fun showing off these exaggerated facial expressions, and don't get me started on how over the top the continuous transformations of Frieza are, or of course until his fourth one, which is simple and elegant, plain, white, and chilling. It's a clear sign that jokes for Frieza, they're over. The androids, like the joke about the old man and a clown, are now pretty old, but look how distinct and frankly goofy every android of Dr. Giro is. But all of them can be genuinely creepy in their debut sagas when we know very little about them. Cell goes from arguably the most terrifying and unpredictable opponent that the Dragon team have ever seen to a little silly but beloved by Toriyama, and thus partially inherited by Cell Max, to something that starts to look kind of like a hero-type character if you saw him in a different light. Perfect Cell in one light could be very characteristic and suave and sophisticated, and yet we still have plenty of that exaggeration, the sheer ridiculousness of Cell turning into a bomb and such when provoked. Boo is one big example of that, as he starts looking the most innocent of all the villains before him, and then ends up being the smallest and most chaotic of them all. That change in an arc? Wow, that was big. And not to mention the whole mood change during Gotenks' fight with Super Boo. A weird mood change that Totally Not Mark had discussed in a more lengthy manner in his mega review of said saga. I give that a recommendation for you. It's a change of pace for sure and a breaker of a serious moment, but still, at the same time, something about it is fascinatingly cartoonish. It's not all Toriyama. Obviously, a lot of those qualities belong to the anime artists as well who were working on the animation. But the author himself is aware that Dragon Ball hasn't had just one father in a long, long time. There have been many fathers over the years. So why am I even taking up your time with all of this? Why on earth, in February 2024, are we talking about Cell Max's boots? Well, back when the movie was in the theaters, we discussed how one of our favorite things about Superhero was how it successfully married 3 different eras of Dragon Ball into one: the original series, Dragon Ball Z, and Super. In the first scene, the gorgeous backstory of the Red Ribbon Army transitions perfectly into a setup from the movie. Carmine, Magenta, and Hedo, and their creations are a major threat to our heroes, despite having that retro, old-school Dragon Ball look. And yes, despite his silly, pumped-up kicks, Cell Max can still be terrifying, because he can keep that old-school Dragon Ball balance in check. Something that might be goofy and ridiculous on first glance, but at any moment can erupt into something incredibly seriously frightening. He could have just been another Perfect Cell type of villain, another Saiyan-faced baddie with monologues like we saw with Moro by the end of it. But instead, he's just a raging, gigantic beast who cannot be reasoned with, which, despite being brightly coloured and having those ridiculous stompers, has one of the most effective zoom-ins in the entire series. He is scary and goofy. He is a part of the world. I've noticed that a lot of the designs that Toyotaro struggled with. The heaters, the Shigerians, which are Toriyama's creation by the way, and Toyotaro had admitted that he wouldn't have been able to come up with them due to their overall cuteness. That wasn't his thing. And yeah, he likes his characters to be cool, Toyotaro, whereas Toriyama, he's not so fussed with that. Toyotaro gets rid of Moro's snout and makes him another Perfect Cell-faced baddie, even though his goat head was so much more fresh and original. Some of those decisions still echo some of the less glamorous fanficky elements of the Dragon Ball AF era, especially in terms of edginess. I think we can all agree that the manga is much edgier and darker than the anime could ever be these days. And I'm not talking about just the blood on display, but the overall demeanor is just meaner, so to speak. But the reason why Toriyama's works were truly great is that he could change the mood in one scene, with one expression, or sometimes with just one word, while Toyotaro still desperately tries to be cool and doesn't embrace fully what made Dragon Ball what it is, being able to go from goofy to serious, but the manga just wants to be cool all the time. His mentor didn't even have to try with all of that. He just went with his silly ideas and did his thing, and it came to him naturally. Of course, in light of what was told by Toyotaro about his master, we do believe that he both remembers and plans more than he lets us believe. Still, a lot of that silliness and quirkiness was also his way of fighting off the editors, and it worked. The Cell Saga is absolutely beloved by the fandom, despite how frustrating it can become once you actually start to think about it over and over again, and with repeated viewings. And again, if you think about it nowadays, Dragon Ball is about a rivalry between 2 guys, one called Carrot and the other one called vegetable. And people are still able to take it seriously. But if you take away that silly, goofy, and sometimes grotesque element, you'll be losing something in the process. Which is why Planet Eater Moro was so effective, because we finally felt that Toyotaro was starting to get what his master was all about. It's a goat fusing with the planet Earth, and it's memorable. Heck, look at Modern Frieza, something we love to talk about on this channel. How his black comedic traits enrich the series, and how after his second return, which is 1000% unearned and everyone initially felt bitter toward, has been an absolutely scene-stealer part of the series, and participant in some of the best gags in modern-day Dragon Ball. And despite that, he's still threatening, still Frieza, still taking both us and the heroes off guard, just as he had all those years ago, when he surprised us all with even more ridiculous transformations and forms. But let's get back on track. Superhero didn't need another character or another villain, and the makers of the movie knew this. But they gave us a Toriyama-esque twist, was Cell, which at the end of the day was just a milestone for Gohan and Piccolo to overcome. Had he been a person with an agenda and a personality and character, I don't think the movie would have been remembered as fondly or as vividly. I don't think I would have enjoyed it, because if we had gotten basically Perfect Cell Max, it would have just been a facsimile of Perfect Cell, to be honest. Right now, he is a tribute and a calling card for Dragon Ball aesthetics in this form. Long before ridiculous hairstyles, Super Saiyans, and screaming, there was this world of adventure and comedy that could turn dark at any moment to keep you on your toes. He is a reminder of those times, while taking elements from later media as well. He isn't even the first kaiju in a Dragon Ball movie, and he has those silly, silly boots. And you know, truth be told, this aesthetic, this particular feel, is what makes Dragon Ball, at least to me. Not all the Super Saiyan merchandise that we've been flooded with over the years. And honestly, Superhero, with all of its quirks and oddities, was a nice reminder of that. It's just such a shame that we were stuck with this stagnant manga for 2 years due to the manga having shenanigans, but hey, it's what is. We still enjoy it, and after dunking on the manga for the past year, we thought we would remind you why we like Cell Max, and why sometimes even the smallest and silliest of details matter in ways that you hadn't thought about before. There are objectively better examples of Dragon Ball media out there than Superhero, that one is for sure. But the one thing that it absolutely nails is making you feel right at home if you're familiar with the overall package. And again, we encourage you to do so, to not be ignorant toward the beginning of the series, even despite some of the more dated elements. Disregarding the original story means disregarding the entire picture of what made Dragon Ball what it is. Despite how loose Toriyama's style might have seemed at the time, the manga, as well as the original anime plus Z, are one continuous story. And it's kind of insane that all of those stories took place in one world. But that's Dragon Ball for you. It's funny, exciting, scary, and sometimes a little silly. But it's memorable. Just like a certain big baddie and his silly shoes.